Anti-terrorism police are putting out stark warnings that recent events overseas are inspiring violence across Britain.
And this has meant the number of calls to the UK's anti-terror hotline have more than doubled since the war between Israel and Hamas began. So
joining us in the studio is Lee Anderson now to reflect upon this. You know, Lee, what jumped out at me then looking at those emails is the lady who was saying that these protests are offensive. Well, if we have free speech and the freedom to protest, we also must prepare to be offended.
Yes, I can agree with a little bit of that, Bev. You know, it's OK to offend people. We live in a free society, but there are 365 days in a year. You know, we save one day for our glorious dead. Now, if these people have got any sort of dignity or respected our history, our values, our culture, then maybe just for one day they could leave it alone. They've had about 3 or 4 demonstrations already over the past couple of weeks. I mean, it's basically, you know, some of my constituents think they're being baited by people of a particular political persuasion. I've seen it personally on Whitehall, the Palestinian demonstrations where they're shouting all sorts of horrible stuff, inciting hatred. And like I say, for one day, when we put our poppies on, we go out and remember our grandparents and their generation, they can't just leave it for one day. It's shocking.
Lee, when they are chanting these terrible slogans from the river to the sea, which we know is a trigger point for Jewish people, and calling for holy war, why don't the police arrest them?
A good question, you know, because we've seen a situation earlier, I think it was last week, the end of last week, when a colleague of mine he shouted something in the street. It was Colonel Bob Stewart.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
He shouted something in the street. Probably shouldn't have shouted it, but, you know, in the heat of the moment, sometimes we say things. It wasn't particularly hateful, I don't think, but, you know, he shouldn't have said it. And he finds out at the age of 74, after having an exemplary military record, you know, got one of the highest awards you can have, and he finds himself being a criminal, dragged through the courts for saying something which he probably shouldn't have said, but it's one of those things.
So do you think there should be no protest this weekend to observe that minute silence? Because in London, every single weekend, it's hard to understand unless you live here. Every weekend, London is brought to a standstill for some sort of protest.
It's every Wednesday we have a protest because it's PMQs. I just think, you know, have you protest, but go somewhere else in London. Go on Hyde Park somewhere and do it.
So do you think there should be no protest this weekend?
Look, I'm a Democrat. I believe in free speech. I believe in a free society. I believe in people's right to demonstrate. I wouldn't demonstrate on Armistice Day, but like I say, we've got big parks in London. We've got Regent's Park, we've got Hyde Park. Come on there with your flags and go and wave them there.
Because I don't buy the assurances that they're going to not get too close to the Senate, and I don't buy the idea that it won't start until 1:45 or something, and 11 o'clock in the morning. My worry is they're going to deliberately disrupt it. I mean, we've now seen people like Tommy Robinson and the far right are going to be there to protect
and also, Andrew, we've seen people like Mick Lynch rear his ugly head and say he's
the RMT.
You know, so, I mean, he's actually going to put his stamp on it, so that'll attract the left, it'll attract the renter mob, the professional protesters. You know, the socialist worker boards will come out. I don't know where they hide these boards. I think it must be in a garage somewhere in London, because they'll come out and they'll start waving these, causing all sorts of nonsense and mayhem. But like I say, I keep repeating it, just for one day, please just give it a rest.
They would say, we can't give it a rest for one day because lives are being lost in Gaza. They want Israel to stop being supplied with arms, and they want a ceasefire. But as we're seeing from some of these pictures here, there is no doubt they will be absolutely, that 100% there are people in that crowd who also want to see Israel wiped off the face of the earth, and actually want to see all Jewish people wiped off the face of the earth. Do you know what saddens me, Lee, is when I see this, to think that this sort of division is here on the streets of the UK, which has been imported from the Middle East. As much as I defend their right to have these protests, it does make me sad that we've got to this place. What bigger lessons do you think can be learned off the back of this?
I think we need to clamp down a little bit harder, Bev. It's sort of been festering away, this has, for a long, long time. And, you know, I've been to Israel. I went last year with the Conservative Friends of Israel, and I saw firsthand the problems they've got and how tolerant the Israeli nation are. They're very tolerant of their neighbours. You know, lots of things we don't know, like, you know, there's so many thousands a day come over the border to work. They just go through like a security thing. They come over to work because they get more money. So they're quite tolerant. And, you know, Hamas, They don't want a solution.
Right.
Their solution is to get rid of Israel. Whereas Israel are quite prepared to sit around a table and discuss a solution, two-state solution, or whatever it is. But when you're dealing with an enemy that doesn't want a solution, only their solution, then it becomes incredibly difficult.
And how can you do a ceasefire with a country that's taken, Hamas, which has taken, 240 hostages? Babies, children?
I always say to people, Andrew, imagine living in this country and an army came from Wales or Scotland and took 200 members of your family and then started bombing you and killing you. How would you react to that? It's unthinkable.
And you'd be outraged if your government said, OK, we're going to do a ceasefire.
Yeah, it's unthinkable. You'd want your pound of flesh. You want to go and sort that out so it doesn't happen again.
You know what I think we are all reassured by is the fact that this hasn't yet escalated in the Middle East. When we first started talking about this 4 weeks ago...
We wondered about Iran.
We were absolutely convinced that somewhere over the horizon, as you say, Iran would get involved, Saudi Arabia would get involved, Jordan would get involved, Hezbollah have been getting involved a little bit in Lebanon. But I, for one, am quite... Well, I'm very reassured, actually, that nothing has accelerated as of yet.
Well, I am. I mean, it's scary, Bev, isn't it? You know, we always say, right from me being a kid, that the problems in the Middle East are going to start whatever war, World War III. We've always been sort of conditioned to think that, but it is encouraging to see that, you know, whatever you think of Iran and these places, they are sort of not taking a back seat as such, but just keeping at it a little bit and not escalating the conflict. I mean, I do hope, Bev, the Israeli army are in there now, and it's going to be a long time.
Yeah.
It's not going to be over quickly. I mean, this is going to be beyond the next general election. And, you know, we see what's happening in the Ukraine. You know, they've got to sort Hamas out. They've got to get every single one of them, because there is a lot of money in terrorism.
Yeah.
It's very profitable. And these people in these terrorist groups, that's their living. And they will fight to defend their living.
Do you worry a bit, because of what's happening in Israel and Hamas, the whole world's eyes are on the Middle East?
Yeah.
Just, nobody's even talking about Ukraine.
That's
but
right.
that war is still going hell for leather.
Yep.
There's all sorts of talk that some of the Republicans now are wobbling about continued aid to Zelensky.
I think what it is, Andrew, there's a greater affinity, I think, rightly or wrongly, to the Jewish people because of what happened in the last war. We've got a lot of Jewish people in this country, descendants who lost their... I mean, I speak to them, who lost their relatives, their grandparents, great-grandparents in the Holocaust. So we've got that connection with our Jewish community, so we feel that affinity to them.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a little bit more personal, because lots of Brits live in Israel as well.
Yeah, they do.
Vice versa.
Yeah. Can we ask your thoughts, Lee, on the stunning performance that was the King's speech yesterday? I thought there was a lot of common sense in there, but there wasn't a huge amount of vote-winning headlines, was there?
Wasn't a page-turner, was it?
Well, look, a King's speech is meant to outline the plans for the year. I mean, I think the big ones are going to come in a couple of weeks' time when we have the autumn statement. That's what people are looking at, because people are worried about pound notes in their pocket. They're worried about how the businesses are going to survive. They want certainty. They want to know they're going to be able to afford their mortgage and pay the bills and energy supply and stuff like that. So, I mean, the King's speech is great. It's great to be there. It's a great pomp and ceremony. It's part of our democratic traditions. You know, it's brilliant to be there and watch it, actually happen. But I mean, the detail in there is what we already knew anyway. There's no secret, is there?
Exactly.
No.
Do you think the King was a bit bored, I thought?
Well, he's getting on a bit, isn't he? So, I mean, and that crown weighs a few pounds.
£5.
Yeah, £5. So try putting that on your head.
I know.
Walking about with that on. So he's going to look tired, isn't he?
And it was historic, first King's speech since 1950.
Yes,
isn't it?
He did the speech last year, but for the Queen. Was there, but I mean, he's had to wait a long time, hasn't he?
What do you make of this rumour? We're talking about the autumn statement in a couple of weeks. What do you make of this rumour that Jeremy Hunt's on his way out to be replaced by Claire Coutinho, just so that the Conservatives can beat Labour to the first female Chancellor?
Who started that rumour, Bev? You?
Him.
Is that Andrew? I think lots of rumours starting.
What do you make of that? Any truth in it?
No, I mean, Claire's only just been promoted to Secretary of State, so she's not moving anywhere sharpish. Look, I think we've pretty much got the team in place that's going to take us to the next election.
But he's not very inspiringly, is he, the Chancellor?
Well, I always said, after we had all the problems with the leadership contest, that we needed boring for a little bit. And people might say Jeremy's boring. He's just a steady pair of hands. He's cracking on.
Steady Eddie.
Steady Eddie. And I think people want steadiness at the moment. They want that certainty. They want, people to get on with the job, stop bickering, and stop being on the front of the newspapers.
You've got lots of Conservatives just sort of stepping away at the moment, haven't you, going out into the workplace because they think they're going to lose their seat and therefore they're jumping ship. What
do you mean jumping ship, Bev?
Well, what I mean by that is that given the polls and the fact that it looks like Labour are going to do very well if we have an election within election. I mean, anything could happen.
Yes.
I absolutely say that. You know, Keir Starmer could walk into some sort of ideological minefield in the next 6 months and just ruin it for them. But it looks like there's a lot of Conservative MPs who are saying, I'm not likely to win this seat. I'm going to go into the workplace now before there's an influx of lots of Conservative MPs looking for jobs. I would put my money on Jeremy Hunt being one of those people.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
Jeremy's got a bobber too, so I don't think he's looking at
True, but he will do what's right for Jeremy Hunt. That's my suspicion. Feel free to defend him.
I'd make this prediction. He will fight a seat and he'll lose it because
so?
it's being carved in half. And the Liberal Democrats are breathing down his neck already. Yeah. And he's pretty much told me he thinks he's going to lose.
OK, I mean, the Lib Dems are formidable campaigners.
Yeah.
They go for the throat. So
yeah, and they'll campaign in that way in Surrey in a completely different way in the north of England, as you know.
Well, they won't even campaign in Ashfield because they'll get told to clear off.
OK, thanks, Lee.
But before you go, can the Tories win the next election?
Yes, I've always said we'll win. Because I've always said that between now and the next election, the Labour Party will start killing each other off. They'll start attacking each other, and we're seeing it now.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Well, lots to look forward to in the next 6 to 12 months. Do you think the election will be in May or in October, November
I
next
reckon
year?
it's going to be a winter. I like the dark nights. It keeps the Labour lot away. Nobody will answer the door in the dark nights.
So you think it will be next autumn?
Yeah.
And that is, yeah. If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I'd have said May. But I think now I'm thinking it's not going to be enough good news for the Conservatives to call an election in May. I don't think.